Namaste. Hello, welcome back to Overclock Showcase, the series where I play with overclocks that are randomly selected for me by a Wheel of Fortune. So just realised I haven't actually set up the wheel to select the next overclock just yet. I ideally would have done that before recording. Either way, we are on to the second gunner overclock of all of the pre-existing overclocks. Obviously, already done all of the new Season 5 overclocks. You can check those videos out now in the playlist. Not that the playlist is linked below or anything, so that's my fault. I might have to do something about that. In fact, I'm not even 100% sure the playlist exists, because they're either going into a new playlist, or they're going into the Build Showcase playlist, or they're not going anywhere. I think Overclock Showcases has its own playlist. And I'm just starting to realise we really haven't paid much attention to the playlists on our channel. For the most part, they're fine, like tier lists, Build Showcases, and podcasts are all pretty much unified under their own playlist. Whatever. Anyway, so we're on the second gun overclock, which means it's a Thunderhead overclock, and I got Carpet Bomber, which was not unappreciated. Not what I would have gone for. I might not have minded being forced to use, I don't know, Neurotoxin actually, because I never ended up doing a Neurotoxin build showcase at any point. And I did do one that heavily uses Carpet Bomber. But what I was able to do is actually escape reusing the build that I used in that Carpet Bomber build video. That was actually still on this current loadout. It used triple tech chambers. It was actually really good. It used triple tech chambers and actually this Thunderhead. Well, actually, there were some similarities, some differences. My cat moaning into her. Anyway, where was I? So, as usual, I'll be showing you two builds that use Carpet Bomber. And they are, well, not that one. They are this one. And this one. This one right here is pretty standard. I think I'm going to do this one second because I actually want to show you this one first. This is what I call DPS Carpet Bomber. And when I was sort of... Okay. When I was given Carpet Bomber as the next overclock to do video, I immediately knew what the main difference would be. And that would be in the tier 5 upgrade. When it comes to... what's that about? When it comes to Carpet Bomber, I always knew it's going to be between... what's it called? Feedback Loop and Suppressive Fire. Not... What a terrible name. That's such a shit name for an upgrade. It was never going to be this one. Ratter. Call it Ratter. It was always going to be Suppressive Fire or Feedback Loop. And it's both, obviously. Those are the two different builds. There is another distinction. I think there's a couple small things, actually. I think Tier 2 is different as well. But Tier 1 is also different. Tier 1 on the Thunderhead is actually a pretty lopsided tier, actually. The Thunderhead is a pretty well put together weapon as far as overclock and mod selection goes. But Tier 1 usually isn't. I would say almost always ammo beats out the others. Even though the Thunderhead already has a ridiculous ammo pool. Damage usually beats it out. And that's because, let's be honest, while its overclock selection is good, the meta really is Big Bertha, Mortar Rounds, and Neurotoxin. All of which get far more use out of more ammo than more damage. Especially Big Bertha, because it already increases the damage so much, but it also comes with a big ammo penalty. Where this damage upgrade is really just not worth taking at all. But Carpet Bomber doesn't inherently get direct benefits out of any of them, obviously. Ammo, I suppose you could consider that direct. And it's quite a lot of ammo still. It's obviously the standard 220 ammo, which actually is 110 more than what you get when you take high capacity magazine. But I thought maybe we could use high capacity magazine. And that's because Carpet Bomb is kind of weird in how it handles DPS. It's actually pretty low direct damage. It's actually, well, it's not. It is lower than Neurotoxin actually, I think. Its area damage is higher than Neurotoxin, obviously, but its direct damage is, I think, noticeably lower than any other form of the Thunderhead. Actually, Mortar Rounds excluded, which kind of puts Carpet Bomber in a weird place. I actually can't really remember how Carpet Bomber worked as well, in the sense of, it definitely had a journey, balance-wise, but I can't remember what that journey was to and from. I believe it actually used to be pretty weak, and then it got buffed like substantially, and became really strong. And now Mortar Rounds is here. But I don't think Mortar Rounds makes Carpet Bomber redundant at all. I will say the only thing that is close to making Carpet Bomber redundant is actually Splintering Shells. I think Splintering Shells and Carpet Bomber are almost equal in overall usefulness. Carpet Bomb is more distinct in being more so doubling down on the AoE aspect, but both are kind of the same thing. If you consider them one in the same, I think Carpet Bomber really does have a reason to exist, even though we have mortar rounds now. There are a lot of things that Carpet Bomber retains about the Thunderhead that mortar rounds does not. Carpet Bomber is hit scan. Carpet Bomber has no projectile fall off, obviously because it is hit scan. No friendly fire, no self damage either. It doesn't have the insane rate of fire penalty. It doesn't have the unpredictability. You know, it's just as accurate as the Thunderhead is normally, which is obviously not too accurate. Anyway, so this, as I said, is kind of the DPS build. The Thunderhead is still our crowd clearer, make no mistake, but the idea is basically to spend very long amounts of time using feedback loop, which is why we've actually taken magazine size in tier 1 instead of ammo. And the fine thing about that is, yes, we are losing out on 110 ammo, sure, but we still have 660 total, which is quite a lot, really. Let's be honest. It's not like you're missing large chunks of ammo. You are missing a large chunk of ammo that you could have been taking, but it's not like you have a small ammo pool this way either. So tier 1, high capacity magazine pairs well with feedback loop. Tier 2 is the same thing. You've got lighter barrel assembly. I wish I could take high rate of fire somewhere, and it would make sense to, technically speaking. But I don't want to be skimping out on damage either. Carpet Bomber really does demand that you take both of these upgrades in tier 3 and 4, so that's something that is uniform across both of these builds. But tier 2, light barrel assembly, we reach that max rate of fire basically instantaneously, which means that feedback loop kicks in basically instantaneously, which means we get a lot of use out of it. It's a fairly simple synergy between the modifications. So that kind of is the Thunderhead for this build. The cool thing about it is that it can be used against just about anything, much like our Burt can be used just about anything in isolation. So this is a pretty standard Burt setup. I will say, I think this is the superior Burt setup, just overall. I understand why people like lead spray. It is very powerful, but Burt already has pretty high damage per shot anyway. Especially damage per individual bullet, which results in high damage per shot. I mean, it's 27 per bullet, which totals up to 81 per shot. And even if only one of those bullets hits a grunt's face, it's a one shot. As long as all 3 bullets hit the grunt, it's, you know, kind of a strong weapon. Like the Burt, people kind of underappreciate how just objectively powerful it is. I understand why it's not overly popular though. But I think compact mags as a fairly punishment-free substantial ammo overclock is a really good gateway to a strong, reliable high ammo Burt. Not necessarily high ammo, but we're not taking the ammo upgrade here. We're taking weak spot bonus instead. That's because the ammo mod is actually very strong. But given that compact mags gets us over the base ammo count anyway, even without taking the ammo mod, it's more than justified to take this. So we really double down on damage, because a lot of what compact mags does as well, honestly, the longer delay between bursts, if anything, kind of increases the stability of the weapon. You will notice that we're not really suffering from not taking accuracy or recoil dampener. You know, we're able to take rate of fire in tier 2 pretty freely. And what this turns this weapon into is a pretty reliable cache clearing weapon, not for big groups, but individual grunts, individual HVTs especially, but even then, HVTs are something that we can more than justify taking down with a Thunderhead as well, and also single targets. Things like Praetorians and Oppressors especially, Oppressors and Wardens and Goo Bombers, Mactera in general, of course, bosses. But bosses, well, that's what we're doing for this anyway. We're actually doing an elimination. An elimination with Carpet Bomber? You've gone mad, they say. I say you haven't tried using Carpet Bomber in elimination yet. It's not, like, crazy good, okay? Which obviously sounds kind of weird for me to be saying anything like that, but I want to be clear about what I mean by that. Basically, I think the benefits are obvious. One of the main things that Dreadnoughts have, one of the main things that bosses have in general, sort of keeps them in check, keeps them from being too weak, is the fact that you're very often not able to damage them from certain angles, you know? And the obvious thing we gain from using something like Carpet Bomber, that we have strong and consistent AoE damage, and damage done in an area. More specifically, our AoE damage is significantly higher than our direct damage, which means we gain benefits, really, when you think about it, from firing a Dreadnought from any angle. Not objectively, of course, you would still technically be doing more damage if you hit a weak point, but the point is that we are not as biased against those invulnerable angles as usual. This is especially apparent against something like a Hive Guard and its shields, but also just the normal Dreadnought, you know, in the normal stages, basically. Shield stages. Obviously, the Burt's going to come into play against when the weak point is exposed, because we want to take advantage of that weak point. Also, as a nemesis, which I want to deal with straight away. And the Breeder, of course. And a Betsy. Whoa. We've got a fucking... Wow, okay. Betsy's interesting, though, because Betsy is not the kind of thing I'd be tempted to use the Hurricane. Thunderhead against. I keep mentioning the Hurricane because... I think it's because I actually love the Hurricane. I think that's what it comes down to. Alright, so one of the cool things about it, too, is even though we haven't taken armor breaking, it's actually surprisingly good at taking out. So I want to put a Dead Burster on this thing. Oh. Oh wow, he actually destroyed the weak point with... Oh, is that the Nemesis itself? Look, it's not... Look, it's close enough to do that, really. What Breeder's shown up to. Breeder's not really for Thunderhead in this case. That's absolutely a Burt job. I mean, look at that. That's pretty good, right? But that's just showing you how good of a sidearm it is. Also, I like it. I like having generational pairings, because obviously the Thunderhead and the Burt are both from the second generation of weapons. They're both added at the same time, so I like it when a pretty nice pairing between the two. You get a lot of that with Gen 3 though. Very often Gen 3 weapons pair nicely together, because I think they, you know, because they were made in tandem but almost in a different way. Also big group of enemies here, so we know what to do. Start blasting. Now obviously, unlike the other build, we don't have the fear upgrade in tier 5, which means we are going to be playing a bit more of a run and gun kind of thing. The positioning is important, because if you're run and gunning too much, you're not going to get that much use out of feedback loop, which is probably the most important part of it, really. So, I mean, this Praetorian, I kind of want to mainly use it underneath, actually, until it starts firing, which is when we switch to the Burt. And those are the kind of nice synergies that you get out of this build. So far, I think this is going well. Obviously, we've already used a fair bit of Thunderhead ammo, but hey, it was a Nemesis. That I actually kind of... I didn't forget about Nemesis, but I kind of forgot that it's not too unreasonable to have used quite a bit of ammo against. That's not that weird. So I think our ammo economy is just fine. And we still got a Betsy to deal with as well. I think there's some enemies on the other side of the wall, right? Also, my cat's just sitting in the corner looking at me. Probably wants to leave, but she's not making a fuss. So we'll just leave her there. Oh, hi. Things like Sting Tails does pretty well against as well, because obviously we have damage that ignores armor. Not the kind of thing we're going to waste the Burt on, where it's kind of got... Sting Tails got a hard to hit weak point and lots of heavy armor that's, you know, just going to block the bullets, so it'd be kind of a waste. Is that another Breeder I just heard? It is. Piece of shit. Ew. Whoa. And a Brood Nixon. Come on, mate. Come on, open up. I'll focus on the Breeder. All that stuff. Web spitters are something we can deal with. very easily. Now, I did mention the presses earlier. Presses are the kind of thing where they are absolutely a bird job, not a front-end job. Okay, well, we need some nitro, don't we? Me. Anyway, so I can already sort of give some sort of thoughts. Well, first of all, I just want to say I like Carpet Bomber, and I think I always have, but well, not always. When I discovered that Neurotoxin was good, which took longer than it should have done, I kind of just dismissed Carpet Bomber. But oh, okay, now she's upset. All right, we'll let her out. Anyway, so I used to kind of dismiss Carpet Bomber, but it's been a while. It's been my outlet. I've liked it for a very long time. Although here's one thing. Actually, no, it wasn't on display there because those are technically Glyphid Spawn, not Glyphid Swarmers. They are different. If anyone didn't know, that's kind of one of the breakpoints that it doesn't meet that I think is quite frustrating. It doesn't meet the Glyphid Swarmer breakpoint. I think it does, like when they're in the very center of the blast, but it has damage fall off in the radius. And at the edge, definitely at the edge, swarms don't get killed. They do if you're using feedback loop, which is actually a very important breakpoint that feedback loop helps the weapon get past, where it wouldn't normally be able to do that. I think that is actually genuinely important, and I'm not starting this Dreadnought fight without having at least enough for a resupply. But yeah, Carpet Bomber is one of those overclocks. I think it's actually in a really good place at the moment, to be honest. It's not too weak, it's not too strong. I don't think it's being overlooked just because there's a flashier sort of version of it in the form of mortar rounds. I think it's very solid. And there's definitely reasons to use it. I think another edge it has over mortar rounds, of course, is just the ammo. It just makes it so much more flexible. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay. Oh, what the? A detonator. Is that actually about detonator? Ah! Oh god, it is. Somewhere along the way, this has gone very wrong. God. Any nitro. Any nitro at all. That counts. Ah! Oh, man. Blue bugs count as nitro. Where's the nitro? There it is. Rocks and stones may break my bones, but fear will never hurt me. Oh, there was more nitro in here. Bosco, you can get that. No flares ready. Oh, hi. Am I going to bulk detonator the dreadnought? I don't think so. Like, where's it at? I can justify it, that's what I think. Oh! Okay, there we go. We begin. Right, twins actually are quite a good one. Mainly because of the arbalist. Yeah. Also, just having the magazine size, yeah, I do miss the ammo sometimes, but having to reload much less is also very nice. Kind of another one where you can kind of delineate or delegate the roles of the weapons in the fight. Carpet bomber, or you know, Thunderhead for the arbalest, but for lacerator. Oh dear. Oh, salts. Ah! Well, there you go. I think that was actually a very clean fight, really. I mean, you saw Carpet Bomber working just fine as a sort of single target sort of thing, especially against enemies that don't really have prominent weak points. I mean, the twins technically do. Their backs are weak points, and they do work very well with weak points if you have a weak point spec weapon. But the Thunderhead also did very good work against them. I think a lot of that has to do with just kind of just armor and also them always being exposed as well. So we are technically dealing direct damage whenever we hit them as well. Yeah, just a very clean fight, but I think we definitely had the upper hand as well because there was never really a time, aside from when they were healing or burrowing, that we couldn't shoot them. Sometimes, you know, sometimes it's difficult to justify shooting at an enemy, like the twins. With certain weapons, unless they are, you know, in a certain position or their armor is stripped. But Carpet Bomber doesn't care. Carpet Bomber is like a coil gun in that sense, or a breach cutter, and doesn't really care what state the enemy is in. And I think coil gun and breach cutter are important examples because just something with armor breaking wouldn't necessarily cut it, for example, because not every enemy. It's not like every enemy's problem is armor necessarily. Like Betsy, we weren't doing like amazing against it, but we were still hitting it for okay damage from any angle because of Carpet Bomb. With Group to Mac Terror, as long as you can hit to them, we do just fine again. They're not a no-go. Basically, there's not really anything that is a no-go, honestly, except for oppressors. That's pretty much the only thing you probably shouldn't be shooting. This Thunderhead. Oh, Menace. Well, Menace is interesting or not? I don't. Maybe not. A Menace is mainly a Burt ordeal. I don't know why I didn't stun it at any point.
Yeah, give me some sugar. Hot.
So is Menace AI just terrible, or am I stupid?
Feeling much better now.
Like, why do they so often just unburrow or burrow out of the ground and start shooting at nothing. Speaking of nothing, not really saying anything at this point, let's skip to the next dreadnought. That might be the first time I've ever not been hit by a Praetorian breath attack. Oh, you know, first time for everything.
Open. Flares recharging. Zip line done.
Okay. Oh, this room is terrible. Hey. What was I walking on? What is this? Fuck you. Let's do this. Normal dreadnought, that's fine. Start blasting.
No survivor.
Oh, no, 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 no! Oh my god. Also, this is the normal dreadnought especially is a really good showcase for this bird because it takes down the actual vulnerable stages so quickly. Like, it's less than a clip, which is, I think, really impressive.
Time to fill the air with lead. I was born ready.
You know what, let's finish it with carbon one. And there we go. And that's that. So I think we've seen from that mission, carbon bomber under the right circumstances can be used to pretty decent effect against single targets, if they're the right kind, bosses. But I think Caretaker would definitely count as well. So we saw Nemesis, we saw Betsy, and we saw Dreadnoughts. And like I said, I think Caretaker would be a great one. Omens as well. And I think we're getting a lot of that from combining our DPS sort of upgrades. Having a larger magazine, having feedback loop, and also having lighter barrel assembly. All just helping us get that higher DPS. That unbiased DPS, that any angle DPS. Of course, you know, Big Bertha is very strong, but when it comes to bosses, it is weak point or at least vulnerable point reliant. You can't just use it against any area boss. And of course, on top of that, that's really a boss encounter thing, right? Outside of boss encounters, we're mainly going to be using it for clearing crowds, but it still does a fantastic job at that because our DPS sort of specification makes it clear those crowds quicker, which makes it a pretty, pretty comprehensive build for the Thunderhead. I hope the next one stands up against it, because the next one I've kind of just been trusting will work out fine as a really reliable build. I haven't really been practicing with it. This is the one I've actually been practicing with because it's sort of a new creation in a way. So we'll see. I'll see you back in the ring. Oh! Whoa! Whoa! Anyway, welcome to build 2. There it is. As you can see, I've selected a basic mission. Thankfully for me, assignment mission. But we got more enemies and aggressive enemies. Why have we got aggressive enemies? Because we're going to be putting on display the importance of crowd control. Because build number 2 uses suppressive fire in tier 5. So what are the differences? Ammo in tier 1. Easy explanation why. DPS isn't as important, especially with such strong crowd control in tier 5. Which going in for crowd control and having a crowd clearing overclock like Carpet Bomber means that this Thunderhead is a crowd clearer and crowd controller, not a DPS weapon. Which makes it kind of weird when you think about the fact that we don't actually have a DPS weapon in this build at all. Obviously, it's kind of crowd DPS a little bit, but we kind of have to be chasing enemies, given that we're going to be fearing them away a lot as well. But the fear is important for just a host of reasons. And I mean, Praetorians are going to be a big one. You know, turning Praetorian around so we can light them up. Other stuff. Accuracy. I don't actually know why, to be honest. Tier 2 is probably, I would say, is kind of up to you. But I get a bit more value out of the accuracy when DPS isn't my main focus. So that's kind of what it comes down to. Tier 3 and Tier 4 are a wash. We know we have to hit these upgrades. That's given. And of course, Suppressive Fire in Tier 5, which is such a strong fear upgrade. It's actually kind of crazy. It's so strong. It keeps the crowds in check. Obviously, the difference between this and Neurotoxin is that in Neurotoxin's case, you're often going to have a damage over time effect affecting those feared enemies. In this case, you're kind of just going to have them run away from where you're firing, meaning they'll start avoiding damage. So we will be chasing enemies a bit, but that's fine. And against dense crowds, it also really doesn't matter. The fear effect, the crowd control it has, is still worth taking. It's more than worth it. And you'll basically just see that. I don't need to explain it much more in the terminal itself. Anyway, so we've got a elephant round here. And it's pretty simple, really. Elephant round. Built in every way that makes sense, except maybe tier 5, just because I can't shake Neurotoxin coating. I don't really feel too strong a need for Deadeye. I've got the accuracy in tier 1. And Elephant Rounds itself does actually increase accuracy. So I'm not too worried. Everything else is just built around supporting Elephant Round. So we got all ammo and weak point bonus. Why all ammo? Well, because look at the amount that we get compared to our ammo when we take the damage upgrades. I like the Bulldog. I think it's a fairly well-rounded weapon, but this part of it is truly disastrous. Tiers 2 and 4 are completely fucked because the damage upgrades are entirely useless. The only exception is volatile bullets, I'd say. That's it. Apart from that, they are absolutely horrible upgrades that you should never use. The ammo upgrades are so much better. And in Elephant Round's case, it's literally just because Elephant Rounds adds the damage that we need. It doesn't really do anything valuable by taking these upgrades. We'd rather just have more damage. And that just gives us more use cases, basically. Honestly, something they could do, if they wanted to leave at least one of them at the same value, maybe this one, if they also made this add armor breaking to the weapon as well at the same time, it might become quite valuable. I think Elephant Rounds with armor breaking would suddenly become really great, especially against things like Brundles and Shellbacks. So that's just a thought. But yeah, that's pretty much it, actually. But obviously, we get a lot of benefits from crowd control. It lets us Praetorians around, and in general, just keep us safe and keep enemies away from us and sort of controlled, which makes it much easier to use a very precision, single shot, high damage kind of weapon, like the Bulldog, specifically like Elephant Round's Bulldog. Which was kind of strange that I've gone for more enemies as well, but I think more enemies is just a very fair factor to play with when we have crowd control, or crowd clearing, sort of the main focus of the overclock. I think carpet. I mean, I'm going to be using. Look, I use enemy frequency like pretty much all the time, but especially in the case of an overclock like Carpet Bomber, it's definitely not going to be turned off. But hopefully, because crowd clearing, no, crowd control is a stronger part of this build specifically, you can see why I want aggressive enemies on as well. It will show you just how powerful that fear upgrade really is. And because this is an egg hunt, the chance that we might have to experience these combat assets with certain immediacy, one might say. Oh my. Here we go. Oh wow. Well, there you go. Good start. I hit that from here? Not easily. But accuracy kind of comes into play. There we go. Okay. And that should do it. Right, that reader I want to take out as soon as this weak point gets exposed. Oh shit! What a wonderful sequence of fuck ups. So the Stingtail is probably the most notorious weapon. Weapon? What the hell has happened to me? Stingtail is probably one of the most notorious enemies for this build specifically because elephant rounds does not fancy Stingtails. And that's kind of it. And because we don't have feedback loop, we are actually a bit worse at breaking armor. We're just with the flat, you know, sort of base carpet bomber damage, which isn't like, you know, it's not amazing. There you go, there's another part of why fear is so good. Interrupting attacks. Stingtail grabs, for example. Still, aside from my sort of fuck-ups, I think you can definitely see some strong crowd clearing and strong destructive capabilities, all as a result of the way I built the Thunderhead. Which is why, by the way, I would say your choice of secondary here is sort of your choice. I do like Thunderhead. I do like Elephant Rounds Bulldog. It's not my favourite thing in the world. I'd probably rather be using Homebrew Powder. But you can kind of go for anything you want. Oh, that was nice. Oh, that was even nicer. Oh, shit. Yeah, Macteras are kind of difficult. Luckily, they were fairly close to the ground, which meant they were actually get feared by the explosions, which is exactly what we want. Also, because we have the accuracy, it's actually not too hard to hit them and fear them that way. Especially when you're playing with something like aggressive enemies, they're going to be firing more often and with faster projectiles, so disrupting their attacks is much more valuable than normal. So those swarms were actually dying, which I think is because they were very close to the centre. Yeah, I think you can actually see some of them there were left on a tiny sliver of health as well. So that kind of displayed both aspects of the swarmer conundrum. I would say we can definitely justify cracking open another egg right now. All in all, I think it's clear that it's well, a couple of it's kind of an overclock that I like, but don't have a fondness for. It doesn't speak to me necessarily, but I do like it, which is a slightly strange way to view an overclock that you like. You know, it's never my sort of preference. when it comes to the Thunderhead, I don't really have anything that sort of draws me in, except probably combat mobility, which I know is like not even a particularly popular pick. It's actually considered by some to be not a great overclock, which isn't that unreasonable. It's not great, but I really like it personally. Okay. I think maybe now think a little bit about supplies. Adosite jelly shield. Cave jelly. What it's called, right? Cave cruiser. They used to be called cave jellies back in the day. For my time. Anyway, as I'm recording this, Sunday the 6th of October, that newsletter I mentioned still hasn't started up again. So we'll see what happens with that. Maybe it'll be this Monday, the Monday that's just passed. Another thing that's supposed to be happening is there's a Halo Championship going on at the moment, and I know that on the day that I'm recording this, they're supposed to be making an announcement before the finale. Studio update of some kind. Maybe a new Halo game's been announced. Who knows? It would be nice. I know that 343 are in a bit of a weird spot, and they're definitely in a weird spot as far as like public favour goes. I don't hold them to particularly high regard. I also don't hate them like some people do. But I think a new game is something that is kind of needed right now, or at least an announcement of one, specifically for the story. I think Halo Infinite's story was really good, and I don't want it to be abandoned at all. Anyway, that's enough Halo ranting, because that's completely irrelevant to this. Also, you can see on sort of the face cam, you can tell it's getting a bit later in the year. It's only 5 PM currently, and it's getting dark as far as like the camera goes. It's still perfectly light overall. Obviously, it's slightly dimmer than it was during the summer. It's still perfectly light. I can see everything outside, but the camera on my laptop, the webcam, is just not like that robust in that sense. It doesn't really understand lighting, which is kind of how cameras are, I suppose. I think we actually are going to do this Tritterlight now. It's not a bad thing to get, because obviously we've done 2 pretty basic missions, no mutators on either of them. So getting sort of things like the Nemesis and the Betsy we had last mission and the Tritterlight here, sort of nice little additions to the complexity of the diversity of the engagements that we're having. And I think Fear, in something like a Tritterlight, Fear is going to be quite valuable. I mean, depending on the situation, Tritterlights can actually be quite useful for these videos, because depending on where the bomb dispenser is placed, I sometimes go down the route of just pure survival. Where is it? Oh. Are we going to use this as a survival thing? Yeah, I don't need the overclock. It wouldn't be an overclock, it would just be mineral canister. So that's fine. Let's just fight. The relentless hordes. It's actually a good way to get lots of enemies as well on a game mode like Egg Hunt, where sort of the total number of swarms is obviously limited. Technically there would be unlimited enemies because we would get pressure waves still, but it's a good way to get a good amount, I think.
Run for cover! Lock and loaded.
If they spawn, sounds like they are. Ooh. I think I still don't have the achievement for this, the carpool achievement. You kill 5 enemies while riding a silicate harvester with with 3 other teammates. It's kind of crazy.
I was born ready.
You know what? I guess I can actually justify sort of. You know what we should do?
Right there.
Get an egg. I should have done that earlier, even. We would have really sort of compounded the amount of enemies coming at me.
Weapon ready. Moscow, come here. Let's go.
Oh, I forgot we'd do that. That might eventually end up being kind of cheating if we'd gotten a swarm or two.
Ready.
Okay, well, there you go. There's a couple things that just sort of showcased the strength of both weapons, actually. And also, me kind of just
Molly carries
out of nowhere going kind of god mode with the accuracy. I can never normally do stuff like that. I don't tend to have good accuracy in shooters. Just not my bag. Not the worst in the world. I wouldn't call it, you know, comedically bad or anything, but definitely not my forte. Who needs mortar rounds when you got that? I mean, come on. I know mortar rounds could do that as well, but that was great. That was so satisfying. Holy shit.
Terrain scanner just
Oh my god, I forgot about that. Whoa. Okay.
loaded.
I mean, there's not even much to say. I think a lot of what's going on here is very self-evident for Carpet Bomber's strengths, and I think in both cases you saw the strengths of taking feedback loop, but also how well the field works. And in some cases, when you sort of have quite level terrain, or at least when you're not firing on top of the enemies, you're also firing at them in sort of front-on way, and it's quite a dense horde, you actually often end up sort of increasing the density of enemies, even if it's for short windows, by fearing the front of the horde go back into the enemies behind them. You do briefly create windows of greater enemy density and therefore greater overall damage. And I find those moments really satisfying. You saw some of that just now with the second most recent sort of wave that we dealt with. That sort of big group of grunts. You definitely saw a lot of that going on. Anyway, I'm going to do some mission stuff. Probably going to get all the Apoca Blooms. I'll see you when I'm ready to get another egg, I think. I don't know why. Well, maybe I do know why. I don't know. But the dense biozone's got maybe the most nostalgic feel to it out of all the biomes for me. It's just, I don't know why it's the most reminiscent of the early days of playing the game for some. I don't know why, but it just is. I like it for that reason. I don't like the fact that it spawns more Nados like shockers than other biomes, but aside from that. Also, just because of our sheer ammo efficiency, I've come to the conclusion that things like Stingtails, I'm just going to use the Thunderhead against them. I'm not going to think about Bulldog. We just don't need to. It deals with them. Oh my god. It deals with them more than quick enough. Bulldog is sort of reserved for hefty or obvious weak point, and like, you know, Praetorians and Wardens kind of thing. Pressers for sure as well. Pressers would be a big one. We haven't really got any mission yet, so can't really substantiate that, but alright. Let's return to home base. Probably. Yeah, I've actually been overusing the Thundered a little bit. Oh, there's an oppressor. Good. Do I need to take a resupply though? That's what I want to know. I don't think I do. Now I do believe that Mactera spawn. Actually, we can check this. I think they do have a explosive vulnerability. They do. They all do. Oh, not all of them. The main guys do. Well, actually, I should probably explain something. The Miner's Manual, it's not like you need to take it with a grain of salt necessarily. But you kind of shouldn't really view what it says as strengths and, or weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Weaknesses and resistances too literally. For example, robots. It displays... The Miner's Manual kind of displays weaknesses and resistances in a more theoretical, well, in a practical way, but not on a code level. It's not really referring to what's going on internally. So when you look at any of the robot enemies and you see they all have a weakness to fire, you don't actually do more fire damage to them. It only lists it as a weakness because robots have the weakness of when you set them on fire, they instantly die. That's what the weakness is referring to. It's the fact that they have a functional weakness to fire, not an internal sort of weakness to the damage type. They might do as well, but I believe sort of why I made a mental note of this like so long ago is because I'm pretty sure they don't take more fire damage. Their only weakness to fire is the fact that it insta-kills them when you set them fire, which is a valid weakness, but it's not exactly the same as the idea of like fire damage doing damage to Macteras, for example, which it does. That is true. Or like explosive damage doing less damage to oppressors. I mean, most things, they are kind of just very internal, sort of numbers-based things, but some of them are like that thing about robots. I literally had to do that to remember robots. I think, if I'm not mistaken though, Mactera also have... Oh, they don't! They don't have a cryo weakness displayed, which I would almost expect because I would expect that for the same reason. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Let's check the robot section. Patrol bot. Okay, it does actually have a... They do have weakness to fire. Caretaker doesn't have anything. Well, the appendage should have the fire weakness too, because they do take... It does the same thing. So should he. I don't know. The Miner's Manual is kind of weird. I wouldn't say it ever lies to you, but it's not. It's almost like a badly researched manual, like in universe. Kind of how I like to view it. It's not misinformation, but it's almost like the guy who wrote it doesn't quite know why they wrote what they did, even though they're not wrong. I love it when a Praetorian gets feared by a sticky grenade, but it just fears it to walk towards you, so you basically just create a suicide bombing Praetorian. It's great. Alright, let's get out of here. And that'll be it as well. I mean, I think this is actually a very strong showcase for the Carpet Bomber. It's sort of two relatively distinct forms. Obviously, it's kind of something that I think is really evident by now, is that it's not... I think most of these, the two builds aren't always going to be like... They're not always going to be super distinct. There's always going to be a difference, and it's always going to be a difference in how I use them, especially. I'll always try and make sure of that. But I think it's actually better than... Certainly better than the previous flamethrower one. Certainly. But very hard to conjure up a difference there to show between two builds. Although honestly, it really wasn't actually. Anyway, we've seen Carpet Bomber is an extremely powerful crowd clearing weapon, but you can spec it for both DPS or for crowd control, and it can be very good at both. I would say the DPS thing though is slightly more skewed towards boss encounters. I will admit that. It was just something I wanted to do that was kind of interesting, because I imagine the most standard sort of meta Carpet Bomber build sort of just revolve around the crowd clearing and control, so therefore we would use suppressive fire. I don't know that for sure. Maybe we do use feedback loop with Carpet Bomber. But I think it was interesting to take that approach, especially with the increased magazine size. Overall, maybe the second build is slightly better, but that's just it's a bit more conventional, and therefore probably more familiar, just easy to understand. Just having more ammo makes you a bit more flexible. But I think I do still, for the most part, recommend both builds equally, and on the whole, I certainly recommend Carpet Bomber. I mean, it's a great overclock. It's definitely like an A tier overclock, I'd say. It's obviously it's technically not flawless, but its flaws are baked into its design in a way that not nonsensical. You know, the trade-offs are clear. You know, the positives that you get, I think, do match the negatives. I would say the main negative isn't the loss of damage inherently. It is, but it is in the sense that it's what you lose from that. The kind of targets that you can't really justify shooting. But we kind of overturned that a little bit with Feedback Loop, where suddenly shooting a Praetorian made perfect sense, actually, despite using Carpet Bomber. So it's got weaknesses, but they can sort of be covered up by the way that you actually spec the weapon. And I tend to find that kind of thing quite engaging. So I think Carpet Bomber sort of winds up being a really just attractive and sort of well put together overclock that plays well with... it sort of encourages upgrades in certain tiers, but also encourages variety in other tiers. And I think that's a really special thing to have for an overclock, where it makes some things very obvious picks, where it's like you really don't have a reason to not pick this, but in other tiers it actually opens up potential for build diversity in those other tiers. You know, it's not the kind of overclock where you're going to be, you know, relying on the overclock for all your AoE needs. You're not going to be taking damage here and armor breaking here. You're going to be taking these two upgrades, but the fact that it kind of almost makes these must picks is actually kind of balanced out and made interesting by the fact that it actually encourages diversity in the other tiers. I think that's really cool. But that's Carpet Bomber. So as always, if you enjoyed this, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this and you want to stay on top of everything to do with Deep Rock and Rogue Core, then please click the bell. I will now spin the wheel to find out what we're going to be getting next time. Next time will obviously be the next Driller Overclock, and will be our first Cryo Cannon Overclock. Look at this ugly bastard. So I will briefly take a moment to set up the Wheel of Fortune, and I'll get back to you with that, so feel free to stick around. Okay, so if you've watched any of these videos up to this point before, you kind of know how this works, but just in case you don't, I'll explain very quickly. So I'll show you the Wheel of Fortune in a minute, but let's just look at this first. So first of all, kind of crazy that the Cryo Cannon's got 4 balanced overclocks. That looks so stupid. But how this works is that we take this list of overclocks and turn them into numbers. So that is left to right, top to bottom. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And obviously crystal nucleation is one we've already done, so that's number 1. Therefore, number 1 is taken out of the list, which means on the wheel we have numbers 2 through 7. Please observe the background image if you wish. They are there for your entertainment and mine. And of course, as soon as we get the number, I will very quickly go back to the game and just show you what it is. Obviously, many of you can probably easily connect what overclock we got as soon as the number comes up, but nevertheless, I know what I want as well, and I'm not going to get it. Wait. Oh, no! Really? Oh, fuck. Okay, so 5. I guess we're getting the boring ones out the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Improved thermal efficiency. Not a bad overclock by any means. Actually, it's like definitely not a bad one. Do I have it equipped anywhere? That's always a pretty useful. Probably been replaced by crystal nucleation somewhere. What's the crystal nucleation build that I don't use? Definitely not you. Probably not you. What the fuck is that? Whatever that is, that's changing. To tuned, not tuned cooler. Improved thermal efficiency. So that'll be next week's one. That'll be the next Driller Overclock. So yeah, once again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you then. Bye.